The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your financial advisor. Hi there, my name is E, and this is Not Your Father's 2 Cents. With Halloween just days away, are you feeling haunted by your finances? A recent survey from Capital One found 77% of Americans feel anxious about their financial situation. So what can you do to overcome your financial fears? Joining me today is financial expert Kelly Gilbert. He is the co-founder of EFG and brings more than 20 years of experience to the industry. Okay, so I'm basing this off of a survey that I found from Capital One that found that 77% of Americans feel anxious about their financial situation, and another 58% feel finances control their lives, and 52% say they have difficulty controlling money-related worries. Do you see that a lot with your clients, or do you notice like a pattern that people have when they come in? Like, is there like a common fear or?
Every fear that my clients have, and even myself, and I'm sure you do too, Alyssa, is fear of the unknown and those items that are out of our control, mostly out of our control. Everybody wants to have control of everything. You can't have 100% control of everything, can you?
No,
and
unfortunately.
We fear that. Yeah, exactly. things like market crashes, right? I mean, they're all, oh my gosh, Kelly, the market crashes, or inflation spikes. We had, 2021, 7% inflation. We have no control over that. An economic downturn, job losses, business hits, healthcare costs. Some people are like they as you get a little older, that becomes a bigger concern, and it's out of your control. Taxation, tax hikes. I mean, that's one thing that's out of our control. And you think about all these things that are coming at you that is out of your control, and all of a sudden, the more you think about it, the more fear you're probably going to instill.
Right. You can definitely go down a spiral once you start thinking of all the what ifs. So going with that same survey, 68% said they fear they won't have enough money to retire. What are your thoughts maybe on that? Do you think it's getting harder to plan for retirement, or do you think people just don't understand what they need to be doing to ensure that they can retire?
Alyssa, I'm going to tell you, our parents, this is you call it not your father's 2 cents, right?
Yep.
When my dad was getting ready for retirement, he knew he had a pension. We don't, very, very few of us have a pension. I'm going to tell you, I do income planning for my clients, and those clients who have a pension or some sort of lifetime income coming in, man, that offsets a lot of the savings worries, because that income just keeps coming in. Let's face it, during retirement, you're not so worried about your savings. You're worried about how much you can spend.
Yeah. And if you can maintain the cost of, the lifestyle that you had.
The lifestyle that you have, exactly. And so when people are saving, I always tell them, I say, there's two trade-offs. You want to think of it like a teeter-totter. On one side is this income stream, and on the other side is your savings, your savings comes into play when your income can't meet your goals or your needs or your retirement income need. And, and that's a basic is, how much income do I have? Well, how much do I need to spend every year? Hey, if my income can't handle that, I'm going to have to take some from my savings. And as the years go on, as inflation goes on, your Social Security doesn't rise the same rate as inflation, yada, yada, you need to take more and more money out of your savings. That is not something that most people cannot do that today in an Excel spreadsheet. You need to have some better software to run an income plan. And I'll tell you what, getting away from fear, one of the ways you can do it is to get an retirement income plan set and says, here's how much I need to spend every year. Here's all my income to try and support that. I'm a little short. Then I'm going to take this much out each year. And then next year, I'm going to take out a little more out because of inflation. And then
Right.
you can track that all the way down till, that age-old question, tell me when you're going to die, and I'll tell you exactly how much money you need.
Tell me everything that's going to happen once you're done working, and I'll give you the perfect number.
The perfect number. It's that easy.
What do you think there's like a target age when people should start, or maybe what's the first steps to planning for retirement? Because for me, I'm 27, so I'm like, oh, please, if I even get to.
Yeah. That is true too. The independently wealthy dream in America is still there. So, Alyssa, don't give up. Retirement is a financial decision, not an age. You need to say to yourself, this is, and I just said it in the previous question. What do you think your income, your spending needs are going to be through your retirement? And have you created enough income and savings to support that? When you hit that, that's when you go for it. Unfortunately or fortunately, not everybody becomes independently wealthy like you are going to be at the age of 35 and be retired. So most of us are stuck in the reality of America, and most of the numbers is that at age 62, you can begin collecting Social Security benefits. That is a income stream. And at the age of 62, I am encouraging all of my clients now. It used to be years ago, we used to say age 70. I'm telling my clients, I want you to look at age 62, and I want you, let's do an income plan, and let's see if that income from Social Security plus your savings can cover you for the next 20 to 30 years. 30 years would put you at 92 years old. That's a pretty good plan.
Yeah.
20 years, 82 years old, that's a little bit shorter, right? But depending on, heck, my female clients, I have to plan out to age 95.
Right, yeah.
The age is getting, who thought living longer was going to be a liability?
I know, right? That's usually that's the goal, is to live longer and have, reclaim your time after you're done working. But with the way things are going and costs going up, it's a double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword. So when you go back to what age is best, well, it isn't the age. Although age 62 is about the first year most people can start thinking about it because they need that income from Social Security. The age to retire is when you are financially able to handle the next, and tell me when you're going to die, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. With you, Alyssa, you're going to be at age 35, you're going to be retired. I'm going to have to plan for the next 50 to 60 years of retirement.
When you're saving money for retirement, do you think like one type of investment works better than another? Or how do you kind of advise people, I guess, on, what investments they should make?
Every savings you make should be tax-free or tax-aware, not pre-tax. And let me ask this question. I give a class about every quarter at a local college here for people who are entering retirement. And I always ask them the question, I say, so on a pre-tax IRA or 401k, you're delaying your taxes till later. Who thinks taxes are going down in the future? Nobody raises their hand. I said, so if taxes are going up in the future, should you pay your taxes now or later? And most people sit there and say, well, gee, I was told that I could live at a lower rate. I'd be spending less during retirement. Well, that would be true if inflation didn't exist.
Right.
So everything, when you mathematically look at it, you should max out your Roth IRA first before you put any money into pre-tax. Now, there is a caveat to that. Alyssa, I'm going to tell you, the one caveat is if your employer matches your contributions to your 401k or 403b, if they match it, then you put in enough to get the maximum match, nothing more. After that, it's all tax-free in your Roth. Max out your Roth, and then find other tax-aware investments for your money if you've maxed out your Roth.
Can you explain what some of those other investments are?
Well, some of those other ones, yeah. So the very first one is that if you have discretionary income above and beyond the Roth, there is two. One is called tax loss harvesting. That's where you put your money into a It's actually a stock investment strategy where they create paper losses over years that can be used against the real gains next year, and you begin to create income for yourself. This is the way let's say when you become independently wealthy, you'll be doing this with all your cash that you don't know what to do with. instead of putting it into a bank account, and they pay you interest, and then you pay taxes on that interest that year, every single year. Tax loss harvesting uses capital gains instead of interest. And by using capital gains, it's a little more of an involved strategy, but it's much more tax aware. That's number one. Number two is many people have, it was called Be Your Own Banker, Bank on Yourself. I wrote a book in 2014 called Future Proof Investing, available at Amazon for anyone who wants to buy it. I named it the Life Savings Account. If you are familiar with Jim Harbaugh, who just left the University of Michigan, he was given a $10 million life savings account, or Be Your Own Banker. What it is, it's an overfunded life insurance policy. For Jim Harbaugh, they overfunded it by $10 million. He has a $10 million pool that uses a tax code 7702 to grow tax-free and be used tax-free. And also, if he passes away, his heirs would get a couple $1 million.
Wow.
Okay. So that 7702 program, Be Your Own Banker, Bank on Yourself, that program is very, very good. I'm going to recommend it to anyone who is if you're a family man or a family mom, you should have life insurance. And if you're going to have life insurance, you should use life insurance. Don't pay for it. And Be Your Own Banker, Bank on Yourself, as I call it, life savings account, they're all the same thing. They help you to have life insurance, but you use it instead of pay for it.
I'm so glad that you bring that up, too, because I was just reading something that said the statistic was like 47% of Americans overestimate the cost of life insurance. And I just feel like a lot of people think it's not worth it for them, or maybe, they don't even make enough to, that it would be worth it or to consider it. What you kind of were going into it, but that's really not the case. It's and I always tell people, in everything that you read, there's always a shred of truth there. And there is a shred of truth into what you read and what they're reporting. And that is, there are many unscrupulous people out there who don't, maybe not unscrupulous, maybe that's the wrong word. I would say maybe, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say they're lazy in creating a design of an insurance policy. See, that Bank on Yourself life savings account needs to be designed. It needs to be designed correctly. You have to have a certain level of talent, skill, and training to create a policy where the first 5 years you fund it, and after that you don't have to ever fund it again. It's fully paid up. You don't have to pay it again. The interest that's growing inside of it can actually fund the policy, and that cash value is usable. That's a design. Very few people in my industry, very few people in America know how to design those correctly. I don't know what the number would be, but it's pretty small. So unfortunately, people get these insurance policies that don't work out well. They get hurt on them. They write a blog on it, and all of a sudden, it's the God-spoken truth that they're bad. Hey, they have to be designed correctly, and if they're designed correctly, then you can actually have a policy that lasts, for your entire life, but you're not paying premiums your entire life. That should be your goal. And also, that cash value, if you do it correctly, fund it correctly, that can also be used to help your finances, to help against health care costs, things like that in the future. And that's where you come in.
That's where I come in. I personally, so I have a not only insurance license, but I'm also an investment advisor of Series 65, which means I'm a fiduciary advisor. And I wanted to get into this later on. You're going to talk about health, but as a fiduciary advisor, I take it upon myself to design these properly for my clients.
For a lot of people, I feel like who are struggling maybe with day-to-day expenses, or just their income isn't sufficient for their lifestyle, which that's a problem in itself. You probably need to reevaluate your the way you're living life if you can't afford it. But I feel like for younger people, it's so easy to be like, oh, well, I'll just take from my retirement savings this month because I'm hurting and I need a little extra in this area of my life. what would you tell somebody maybe who is looking to dip into the savings that they would allocate for retirement to cover like day-to-day stuff?
Oh boy, that is a very big question. And I mean, so the answer is multifaceted. Let me get to this. There's an old saying: debt is a discipline, and many of us struggle with that. You are either dedicated to getting debt or dedicated to getting away from debt. There is no in between. If you're overspending, then you're dedicated to getting into debt. The other side of that coin is people who have had health issues, they might have had the debt thrust upon them. Some people who go to college, they've chosen that debt as a leverage, kind of as an investment into their future, but the debt still exists, right? So debt can come in a couple of different ways. Here's the 4 ways. To anyone who's listening to this, I want you to think of these 4 things. 1, analyze how you got into debt. Was it because of overspending? Was it because of a healthcare issue? Was it because I thought of it as an investment for my future was through college costs, right? Then I want you to stop going into debt any further. So analyze first. Stop it. Then you create a plan to get out. And that's where the discipline comes in. You set up a plan, and how do you do a plan? The very first thing is list all your debts, list all the balances, list all of the interest rates that are being charged against you. And the rule of thumb is attack those ones that have the highest interest rate and get those off your plate first. So analyze it, stop, plan, and the 4th step, commit to that plan. Be disciplined. And if you can commit to that and be disciplined, what happens, Alyssa, to a lot of people is that after a couple of years, I hate to say that word, after a couple of years, the money that you were disciplined in getting yourself out of debt becomes money that can go into savings.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you have savings, and if you've done what I said, tax-aware or tax-free, tax-aware and tax-free money can be accessed. Unlike a 401k or an IRA, which is pre-tax money, which you can't touch until 59 and a half. After-tax money, that can be used.
Yeah.
For those expenses. You can borrow it from yourself and even pay yourself back. So that's, in my first statement of being tax-aware in all of your savings, also helps in this situation where get yourself out of debt, and then that discipline that you created creates a savings account. And if your savings account is tax aware, you can even use it for those times when you need a emergency fund. Yeah, hey, trust me, I've raised 4 kids. I know what it's like. When that water tank blew, and I was down to my last penny, I said to myself, oh boy, this is going on a credit card.
Yeah.
And I did that the first couple of times, and I said, wow, that $100, or at the time, it was a little over $100, but let's say $100 at the time, became, just like government inflation of overspending, that became a $150 debt because of interest. And I said, whoa, I got to stop doing that. I got to create a savings account.
Yeah.
So that when this happens, I can take from my savings account. And then just when I get the money back, instead of paying off a credit card, I borrowed $100, I pay back $100.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to get to.
Yes. I think a lot of people don't look at themselves as like a source to, you know what I mean? I guess I don't know how to put it into words, but I think it's easy to rely on this credit card because, one, you're not really feeling the immediate effects of it. So it's easy to just keep swiping and swiping and swiping until you get that statement. And then, oh my God, how did we get to $2,000 charged up on this? And then if you don't have that plan, then you're prolonging paying it off, and it just becomes a really ugly thing to deal with.
Yeah, and by having that savings, that discipline to create savings, discipline to first get away from debt. 2, use that same discipline to create savings. 3, when these things happen, you can say to yourself, oh, I need to take from my savings, but since I've saved correctly, I can take it out and put it back in, unlike pre-tax accounts.
Right. Yeah, and the tax, I'm glad that you brought that up too. The taxes is such a big piece because I don't think we talk about that enough on kind of making your money work for you, especially when it comes to saving. Like there are options out there that are tax aware.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of unlocking that knowledge.
Unlocking that knowledge. I always tell in that class that I was telling you about that I give to these pre-retirement people, I say, okay, how many people have money in a pre-tax IRA? They all raise their hand. Just about everybody does. And a 401k or IRA. And I said, okay, how much of your money does the government own? And they all look at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, if you're in the 20% tax bracket, they own 20% of your savings. And if they raise taxes to 30%, they now overnight, with a stroke of a pen, they can go from owning 20% of your money to owning 30% of your money. Now you have less to live on.
Right.
That's tax risk. If you can invest and save tax aware, especially when you're young, like you, Alyssa, before you become independently wealthy at age 35, if you can save young in these tax aware manners, those tax changes have a lot less impact on you, and you will have a lot less fears about tax hikes in the future.
Yeah, which is so comforting. I think when you get to, that's the goal, right, is to get to that
right.
point to where, hey, whatever is going on and whatever they're fighting about on TV doesn't impact me. I know my plan works for me. I've taken the steps to make it happen for me, and I can live peacefully now knowing that, I did everything right to set myself up.
Yeah.
Do you know maybe like what the tipping point is, or do you have any ideas about what the tipping point is that makes people finally be like, okay, I need to go get with a financial advisor. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know like what has made your clients come to you? Is it like fears of not being able to retire or?
So the biggest fear is amongst Americans, and this poll has gone on for a long time. I'm sure it is still one of the largest fears, is running out of money. Will I outlive my money? And going back to not your father's 2 cents, our parents had pensions and stuff.
Yeah.
And they would retire at 65, and their life expectancy was 72. So they always worried about, will I be able to spend all my money? We don't have that. Our life expectancies are much longer.
Yeah.
We don't have pensions, so all we have is savings. So our fear, the number one fear has been, will I outlive my money? That fear is the number one fear that brings people into my office. That is the first thing we talk about is a retirement income plan for the next, how long you're going to live? Well, I think maybe out to age 95. Well, you're 60 now, so we're talking about a 35-year plan. How am I going to make your money last 35 years? How can I make it so you don't outlive your money? That fear is usually, I would say, is the largest trigger point of the people come into my office. Now, I also have another one, which are major life changes. Major life changes are, I typically new parents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're like, new parents. It's a completely different fear. They're like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I got responsibility. I better figure out what I'm doing. And we're creating the savings. When they come in later in life, at the age of 55, 62, 65, now they're coming in and going, well, here's what I did so far. Tell me, did I do enough? Right? And I wish I'd worked with them earlier when they had those major life changes when they're younger. Sometimes I didn't, but I can always help anyone. Come on in. Let's create an income plan, and I'll tell you exactly where you're at and what you can do. And then we can make a strategy from there on how to make it better.
Wow. I cannot imagine being, close to retirement age and wondering, God, I hope I did it right. I hope I'm good to go.
I am. As soon as I get off the phone, I'm working exactly on a call like this. I'll tell you what, they did do it right. So it's going to be good news I'm delivering to them. But it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I'm delivering some tough news.
What do you do in that situation when you are dealing with somebody who didn't do it right? I mean, does that put a lot of stress on you? How do you break that tough news?
So no one wants to hear that their baby's ugly.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So you never tell them that what they did wasn't good. You say, here's your goal, and here's my plan on how to get there. I don't kill the messenger. I'm just telling you the truth here, right? I'm not going to say that what you did was bad. I'm just telling you, if that's truly your goal, here's what we need to do over the next 2, 3, 5 years to get there.
Are people receptive to it usually? Or is it kind of like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm going somewhere else?
Actually, so 90% of the time, after the initial drop their head at the meeting and then look back up at me at the table, and they go, okay, yeah, I can see the numbers. Isn't there any other way besides being disciplined and saving? No, discipline and saving is going to be our number one issue. And then we're going to create these incomes here. We're going to get rid of these liabilities there. We're going to do so. I have over the years as a financial advisor, I'm a fiduciary financial advisor. I worry about taxes. I worry about insurance. I worry about investments, and I worry about income. And by bringing those four together, I've got a lot of ideas on how to help people that people don't already know, that are not obvious. Sometimes, I mean, I'm getting a plan put together for some clients, and they have an option on their pension. They actually are educators. They have a pension. One option was to take the maximum income, but if that spouse passed away, the surviving spouse would get zero. Or they could set up a pension that their surviving spouse would get 50%, but they get less every year in their pension. Which one's better for them on their goals? Is it the full price but zero survivorship, or is it lower with 100% survivorship? And this couple, they have about an 8-year difference in their ages.
Yeah.
So therefore, for the surviving spouse, it was taking the lower payments earlier so that the surviving spouse can get 100% payments for the rest of their life, was the plan that actually worked out best for them. Wow.
That's a tough decision to make.
And if I didn't have a big computer, I wouldn't be able to make it for you either.
So that brings me to another question that I had kind of while you were talking earlier about like life expectancies being longer now. How do you go about even trying to predict that, either with your own life or you as an advisor when you're sitting down with people?
So that's a very good question, and I have recently evolved towards this. Alyssa, start with a given. The given for men in America is 85 and women is 95. And I always tell everybody, statistically, that's the two numbers, but that's not everybody. That's the average. And I say, so I want to ask you a first question. Let's talk about your mom and dad. How long do they live? What kind of life they lead? Great. Now let's talk about, once I've got that written down, I say, okay, let's talk about your health compared to what your mom and dad had. Are you better healthy than them, less healthy than them? How do you feel? I go, okay, knowing what I know about your parents and how they live, and how long they live, and then knowing what I know about your health here, would you like to go longer than the average or shorter than the average? And I let them choose that number.
Do people usually go longer?
The only time that people go longer is if they truly have a mother or father who are pushing up into their hundreds.
Oh, wow.
I just did it the other day. I said, so tell me a little bit about your parents. He says, he's 97. He lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. He still splits wood.
Wow.
I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, nope. And he said, his 100th birthday is the last birthday party he's going to have. After that, no more birthday parties.
We're done. We're done.
We're done. I'm just going to continue living without birthday parties. I said, wow. Okay, so you are obviously going to go over the age of 85. He goes, oh, yeah, we need to plan for 90. But that is rare. I don't normally get that. I had a couple in the other day, and she says, oh, yeah, 95 is a little long. Put me to 90. And I looked at the husband, and I said, okay, 85 this is the average. What do you think? He goes, 70. I go, okay.
Oh, my God. What a range.
What a range. What a range.
Now, I think another piece of planning for retirement is factoring health care into that. that has got to be another big stressor. How do you go about having those conversations, maybe with a spouse or with your kids? What would you tell somebody maybe when it comes to factoring in like long-term health care? Where are we going to, am I going to be in a nursing home? Are you going to take care of me? Is there going to be a nurse that's going to come to my house and take care of me? Nobody wants to think about the end of life decisions. And it's something that you have to deal with, especially as people are living longer now.
So that's a great question, because in fact I did an article on this, your best long-term care options. Someone had interviewed me and they printed it, and I got in there because I said, today, unlike our parents used to buy long-term care policies.
Yeah.
And that's what I all knew about. A long-term care policies is you give the insurance company a whole bunch of money. And if you don't need long-term care and you die before needing long-term care, the insurance company kept everything you gave them. But if you did need long-term care, it paid every dollar.
Yeah. So
this was an all or nothing type proposition. Today, life insurance policies have created a thing called a chronic care for chronic illnesses. If you need a version of long-term care, you can draw your death benefit early while you're still alive to pay for those long-term care. But if you never need long-term care and you just pass away, your heirs get the full death benefit. This is a way to, and if you save in a tax-aware fashion and you can actually have enough discretionary income to create one of these savings accounts, which are dictated by IRS Code 7702, then that plan can also be used as a hedge against long-term care. What I just told you is absolute fact, absolute truth, absolute numbers, absolute math, but it still goes back to what you said, Alyssa. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's a bad subject. Kelly, you just took me down long-term care and death. Two subjects I don't want to talk about. And it is a hard subject for many people to continue with. I have one of the very first one I ever talked to. She was 72 years old. She is in great health, but she's 72. That's a little late to try and get long-term care coverage. It was probably the last year I could possibly get it on her. So I went through all the work. I got everything put together, and I presented to her. I also had her daughter and son in the room.
Yeah.
Discussed it to make sure everybody understood. And a month later, she had never talked back to me, never come back to me. I finally called her. I said, what's going on? She goes, I think you're all just trying to kill me off. I don't want to talk about that. That's a bad subject.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I absolutely understand. And I backed off. But that is not the average. That was the outlier out there. Most people, they get into it, they think about it, and I always, Alyssa, let me tell you this. I will tell you this. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of true. I always look at the wife, or I look at whoever my client is that's looking at long-term care. And I say, do you have any kids? And they say yes. And if they say yes, then I say, how many of them are boys and how many of them are girls? And they say, well, it's all boys. I say, boy, you really need long-term care because no one's going to take care of you.
Right. Yeah.
They'll say, oh, I have all girls. I go, well, your need for long-term care is a little less because those girls, they'll take care of you. Don't you worry about that.
But those boys?
The boys, they're not going to take care of you. You need long-term care. Those boys, they're not going to take care of you. They're going to hire it out if they can do it. So getting long-term care, that savings plan, being smart in your savings, can also create on the life insurance policy, if it's designed correctly, can also have chronic illness coverage that can be there in case you have long-term care in the future, alleviating another one of those fears that we're talking about, healthcare costs.
Yeah. So it's all about getting a plan down.
Yeah, it is all about putting in a plan. I said the first thing is analyze, next thing is stop, and then the third thing was plan. Fourth was execute that plan. But you got to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, guess what? You're already there.
You've got nothing.
That's right.
For that woman who came to you later in life like that, do you know what made her come in? Was it her children that said, "Hey, Mom, you need to figure out, we need to figure out how we're taking care of you"?
She was not coming into my office because she wanted to come in. It was her kids worrying about her and wanting me to come up with an idea. Yes.
Yeah. Well, nice kids at least.
They had the best of intentions. Yeah.
So kind of with the name of this being Not Your Father's 2 Cents, at the end I kind of like to wrap up with like our 2 cents, but obviously it's your 2 cents. So what would you say maybe is your 2 cents on someone who just feels overwhelmed with their financial situation or feels overwhelmed at the thought of even beginning to plan out their long-term financial future? What would you say to them?
I would say,
get over it.
No. I was going to say, you need to commit to gaining a discipline of saving. That's the first commitment. And once you say, okay, I'm going to commit to that, then I want you to go out and look for a proper fiduciary advisor and have that fiduciary advisor help you to create a plan and help you to stay on plan. A proper fiduciary advisor, if you don't know, fiduciary advisors, they have a requirement that every recommendation they give you must be in your best interest, even if it's not in theirs. Unlike, say, a broker dealer, a guy who just sells stocks, he doesn't have that fiduciary requirement. He can say all he wants. His license isn't tied to that. All his license is tied to is selling you a stock or bond that's within your risk tolerance. That's it.
Right.
Fiduciary advisors, we need to look at your total picture. What is your final goal? And then bring taxes, insurance, investments, savings, all into one cohesive plan. That's why I do so many plans for clients that will continue on through your life. Hire a fiduciary advisor. After you've made the decision, hire a fiduciary advisor to gain the discipline after you've decided that you want that discipline.
But it starts with you, for sure. Speaking as the individual, it starts with you wanting to get to that point.
Yeah, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink.
I feel like people just don't want to talk about their money problems, whether, they're embarrassed or they think it's, maybe something they did. I just feel like it's a hard conversation, but it's probably one of the most important. It is the most important.
And that's why that statement you just said, Alyssa, and I'm glad you said that, is the exact reason why those statistics that you open this show with, 70% of Americans feel anxious about their financials. 58% feel that finances control their life. Over half, and sometimes 2/3 of America is in the same boat as you. So don't be ashamed. Go out and get the help.
All right. That does it for this spooky edition of Not Your Father's 2 Cents. Sources used in this episode will be linked in the description. Have a happy and safe Halloween, and I'll meet you back here next week.